Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Taylor McGrath. I'm the Customer Solutions Manager for Pressbooks. And with me today, co-hosting here is Steele Wagstaff. He is the Educational Client Manager. And as guest presenters today, we also have Alexis Lecomte from Collège, Cité, and Adeola Agoke from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Steele, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, thanks. I think I know many of you, but many of you I don't. So I help understand what people want from Pressbooks and then make sure that our developers build it. I've been involved with open education for several years, and I'm really excited to be here, especially on the topic of languages. The very first open education project I ever worked on actually was a Portuguese language textbook at the University of Wisconsin. And working in open education on languages was actually how I met Adeola and many of her colleagues who've been doing some really incredible work that you'll hear about later. So great topic for Open Education Week. Thanks, Taylor, for planning this.
It was fun to do so. All right, Adeola, would you like to say something about yourself?
Oh, yeah. My name is Adeola from the Department of African Cultural Studies, University of Wisconsin-Madison. So right now I am the acting director of the African Language Program, and I coordinate the African languages, the teaching and learning of African languages in the department. So we teach about 5 languages right now, and then we are hoping to add in more as we have, teachers and requests from students. So yeah, I know Steele. We've been working with him and he's been helping us, putting us through on how to use Pressbook. And this we found really, really useful for our program. And it's nice meeting you all. I'm so happy to be here and to talk about what we are doing with Pressbook.
It's lovely to meet you as well. And Alexis?
Yeah, so my name is Alexis Lecomte. I'm from Collège Cité in Ottawa, Ontario. So I work for the Office of Pedagogical Development for Online Courses as a development officer for continuous quality assurance. I am also a creative director of Lecomte, which is my own company. And so we do a little bit of on-site training for private and public companies on how to maintain their website. And we also teach Ontario online accessibility, psychology of color, and so on. So that's a little bit of my background. I think it cut a little bit, did it?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay. What did you guys miss?
I think we got most of it.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you for everyone for coming. So we're here today to celebrate Open Education Week. And what better way to celebrate access to education around the world than to talk about the languages that we're creating resources in and the diversity of those languages. So we wanted to showcase a couple of really cool projects that are happening on Pressbooks right now and in open education ecosystem. And so we are going to have, with Adeola and Alexis, talk about some of the projects that they've worked on or are working on, what the processes of creating those projects were like, as well as the impacts of those projects and who's going to be using them and reading them. So in terms of how this call is going to go, we'll have both Adeola and Alexis talk about their projects, and then later Steele and I will demonstrate some of the tools in Pressbooks that can be used for languages, both for people who are creating books, as well as the scripts that are involved in those books, the technology that is involved in producing and publishing a book that's not in the default language that Pressbooks was created in, which is English. So after that, we'll take some questions. And without further ado, I did mention. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Taylor. You can mention something. I've got one announcement too.
I did want to mention that we are recording this call. So one, we would please ask that people reserve their questions until we'll keep a couple minutes for questions after each of the speakers, and then we'll have questions about the technology after Steele and I have done the presentation. So please keep those your mics muted until those periods are open. And we are recording this session. So if you don't want your voice to be on the recording, we also have a chat through the Zoom, and Steele and I can answer your questions that way.
I was going to say basically the same thing. I'll be monitoring the chat. And if you'd like to introduce yourselves to others as an attendee, you can do that in the chat.
Awesome. So let's get started. Adeola, would you like to begin?
Yeah. So I'm quickly going to talk about how we are using Pressbook for our language program and the different kinds of processes that we try to use to make sure we're able to develop materials for language learners. So let me quickly give you this background. So our department teach like the face-to-face classroom, we teach the hybrid classroom, and then we have like online classroom environment. So for the face-to-face classroom model, so we use Pressbook. We have our instructors use Pressbook to develop materials for different languages that they teach. So the kind of materials that we have on Pressbook for face-to-face kind of interaction are the materials that instructors themselves try to work on using Pressbook. And then how do we get our instructors to use Pressbook to develop the materials? First, what we do is we try as much as possible to have them attend different Pressbook symposium on campus. Like there are a lot of, workshops on Pressbook to educate them on how to use it, the technicality, and then they also work with me to put them through. So basically for each language, so what we do is in our department, we have a Pressbook account, and in that account, we have like books for each languages. So we have Arabic, we have Yoruba, we have Wolof, we have Zulu, we have Swahili. So, and for each of this book, we have myself and Katrina as the administrator, and then the instructors, whoever is teaching that course for that semester is going to be an editor on that same page. And then, so what we do is we try to develop, it could be like a book for each of, this like semester you want to come up with. We are kind of adding up to that book, every semester we add like another chapter to that. So the book keeps, expanding. And so both students, it's public, it's online. So students and other language learners who have access to this. So we basically use, the text, the text box within Pressbook to type in whatever and design it. And then we also use the H5P for to embed media and questions and answers. It also helps really well with the listening practice, which is really, really difficult for learners. Learners have a lot of difficulty managing listening practices across all the languages. It's not just in one language, but we've seen that. And one thing that is also very good with the Pressbook interface is that it allows us to use the font, the unique font for each language that are available on Mac or Windows. Like we are able to use that. For example, for all Yoruba language, I can type using the Yoruba font in Pressbook. So I don't have to like maybe do it separately and then import it. No, I can just type directly, and then everything comes out really fine and neat, formatted neatly. So we do that. And then the second side of it is the online. So it's like the flip side of the kind of materials we develop. And this one really gives us the opportunity to like develop materials across several languages beyond the ones we teach in the department. So the department basically teaches 5 right now, but the online classroom, we have like multiple languages, students who want to do maybe whatever language that is not even offered in our department, but they want to use it for their research or whatever they want to use it for, they come to the online platform to self-instruct themselves in that language. So we encourage these same students to develop materials on Pressbook too. And so this is also another account. So it's like 2 accounts that is being managed by the department, so we have one for the teachers and one from the learners. So the one from the learners is where we have like multiple languages. So depending on what students we are recruiting, so maybe we have a student in Pele. I think Pele is spoken in Liberia, and we might not have that language in the next 2-3 years. It depends on what student is interested. So any other student that is coming, you know, maybe in the next 1 year or 2 years, then we add that student on that same page as an editor, and then the students add materials to that. And it has been very, very useful for learners, because that way they are able to go in and see what other students have done and the process of learning and how they are putting, you know, materials together for different levels. So if you're an elementary learner, you develop, you know, materials that are suitable for elementary, and then I coordinate, you know, all of this process. Yeah.
Awesome. Did you want to add anything, or should take a few minutes for questions?
Right now, I think I have given like basically an overview of what we do with Pressbook, and so our instructors are trained to use it. I guide them if they have any questions or anything, and then UW-Madison is really good at giving us updates on what has been changed or what has been improved or any new thing. So through those workshops, we are able to like, okay, this is the tweak, this is how to use it. And then, so we're fine.
Okay, is there a specific book that you'd like to talk about?
Oh yeah, so because we do many languages, so I'm basically going to talk about Yoruba. So because I teach Yoruba too. So for Yoruba language, we have our Yoruba for second language learner. And this is in the Pressbook account for the department that I talked about earlier. And for this, we have developed materials for elementary and up to the intermediate high level. We currently don't have materials for advanced learner, because so far in the past few years, we've not had students like progress to the advanced high level. So we have up to the intermediate high level. And these textbooks are structured in a way that focuses on the themes and the contents that are relevant for, you know, each proficiency level. So we do this, we introduce the vocabulary, we add pictures, we embed pictures using the media, and then we also have some voice, you know, like audio recorded for listening practices too. And apart from that, we also use the H5P, is it H5P or HP5? I hope I'm not mixing. So we use that also to engage the learner for activities. You know, for each section, we have activities at the end where learners can click on it, and then you have the answer, and then if you're right, then you move on, and that's it. So so basically, that's what we do for Yoruba. And then for Arabic language, our Arabic language is very huge, it's very big. And so we have tons and tons of materials on Arabic book, on Pressbook. And so because we have like multiple instructors doing that, so it is still like structured based on proficiency level. So it depends on the level you're teaching, and then you add extra chapter to the chapter we already have for that proficiency level. And so most computers have the Arabic version of writing and all of that, and it works well with Pressbook too. So far we've not had any problem with writing and typing on Pressbook and, you know, developing your material. It has always really worked pretty well, so we don't have any issues with that. And then students can access this online. And then one last thing that I'm going to share is we have a channel that we call the Slack channel for the online section. So after developing their materials on Pressbook, they share the link on Slack channel for others to see, even though you're not learning the same languages. you still like learn from one another what this person has done in this language, and then the other person can copy the link. Here's the book I just developed in this language, and this is what I talked about. And then they can use that same model to also develop their own language too. Yeah.
It looks like Steele has a question. Would you like to?
Yeah, I'll verbalize the question. So Adeola, one of the things that struck me, I mean, knowing your department and the people in the department, it is so collaborative.
Yeah.
People, I mean, first of all, almost every instructor, every graduate student is making teaching material regularly. Yeah. And they're sharing it with each other. Yeah. And what you were talking about was also having students really involved in constructing learning material. As they've learned something, helping the learners that come after them. It's both incredible. I think it's really remarkable. Many departments are not like that, probably, as you know. And my question was, how did you or Katrina or others, how have you cultivated that kind of sharing culture? Why are you so collaborative? What are the kind of keys that you feel like have made that department work so well together?
Yeah, one key thing that really makes our department unique in this way is that we take pedagogy very seriously, because, you know, UW-Madison is known for the only university in the United States that offers degree in, you know, African languages and literature. So, a lot of students, we get a lot of references and students recommendations from people. Oh, you can go to UW-Madison, they can handle this. So we take what we do very seriously. And one thing that we also do is that we know that there is no way we can give our best if we don't train the teachers. So the first thing we do is that we get all the instructors together on one page to understand the goal of this department, especially when it comes to language pedagogy and language learning. And so the first thing we first tried out was using lesson share. So we started with lesson share, actually, and a lot of departments no longer use it, but we still do that. So what we do with that was, whatever you do in your different languages, your syllabi and all of that, so you upload it to the correct section in lesson share. And then Pressbook came and we were like, wow, this is way better. So why don't we just move on and start using Pressbook? So we ensure that all our instructors get trained, because training is very important. And I think UW-Madison is doing the LSS, the Learning Support Services, they're doing a great job, like sending out emails on whatever they are offering and how to get the information out there. So once they have the training, then what we do is now we want to like connect together to see how we can bring structure to it. I think the collaboration you're seeing is that, that structural perspective of let's have structure to how we are pulling these things together. So, and the first thing we discover is that we don't usually have the same instructor for the same language every year. Some of them would graduate as, graduate assistant or something. Some would move and all of that. So the first thing we came about was to find a structure in a way that will be able to, pull the resources together and then format it in a textbook form instead of just uploading them to lesson share. So, and then we figured that the only way to do that is to, first divide it up based on different languages. And then now within this book for Arabic, we want to have Arabic elementary, Arabic intermediate, Arabic advanced, and then only the administrator can add or remove name. So whoever is teaching is the name I'll just add you to whatever section you're teaching, and then I'll leave you as an editor. So then that way you can see what others have done and then share with me what you want to add to it, how it connects to some other materials that are there, and then that synergy we want to see. And then we have, deadlines for submitting that. Usually we do it like at least you upload a chapter to Pressbook every semester. So like one at the end of the semester. So if yours is ready by mid-semester, that's fine. If it's not ready, then you can turn it in by the end of the semester.
Is that an expectation across the department that everybody's creating content as
for
part
all language instructors?
Wow.
For all language instructors.
Yeah.
For all language instructors, it's clear at the beginning of the semester that you are responsible for adding materials to our Pressbook. And so you should understand what has been there and what your teaching is bringing to the existing material. So that's just the goal. So yeah.
Thank you so much. There's another question in the chat. Sarah posed it. I don't know, Sarah, if you'd like to ask it directly or if you'd like someone to be your voice.
I can ask it directly. Oh, I'm just talking in a webinar. Yeah, I was wondering, thank you so much for this. It's really interesting. I was wondering if you also use Canvas or another learning management system along with Pressbooks, or if everything is all in Pressbooks.
Thank you. Yes, we use Canvas a lot. So Pressbook basically is for material development. It's for us to put materials together in form of a textbook that instructors and learners can have access to. But Canvas is where we have the grades, the teaching materials you're going to use for the semester, whatever kinds of grades and assessments you have for your class, information about your class, all of that are embedded in Canvas. And for the online class, we use both Canvas and the Slack channel simultaneously. So for Canvas, that is where we have all the lessons and how the students can progress from week 1, week 2, and the third one will not be open until you're done with week 3 activity. But part of the responsibility of the online learners is for them to develop materials. So that part is embedded in the syllabus, the requirements. So for week 3, you would develop ABCD on Pressbook. So we would have given them instruction on what to do on Pressbook for online learners. So that week, that will be what they'll be working with, and then they will go and upload whatever they are doing to the Pressbook page. So
Okay.
we use both of them.
Thanks. Well, that's so cool how you integrate the students into the creation process. That's really exciting.
All right, I think we are maybe running a little behind on time. So if nobody has any further questions, we'll go ahead and toss it over to Alexis.
Perfect. It's great actually, because I don't have that much to say, but I just want to say too, if ever my connection does stop for a second, just let me know and I'll repeat whatever you guys missed. So as I said, I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, and we developed one book with and it's one of our French OER that we developed. It's a 14-hour learning unit that was developed with our competency-based approach. Oh, I'm seeing that the internet stopped for a bit. You guys can still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so as I was saying, so it's one of our unit that we have for our certificate called Instructional Design. And it's a 14-hour learning unit that was developed with our competency-based approach here at Cité in Ottawa. And so the name of the unit was, in French, Recherche de ressources éducatives libres, or OER research. And our main goal with this OER was to test Pressbook and the integration with H5P, like Adeola was talking about. So that was our main goal, was to first test it. It was with collaboration with eCampus Ontario, which provided funding for the development of that certificate. And for now, it's the only OER that we do have. We are planning on doing more in the following months. And we're always open to collaborate with other colleges or university, whether it be in Canada or in the United States. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have any questions about that.
So is this already being used, the certificate program?
Yeah, so the certificate has been running for, I would say, at least 3 to 4 months now. We don't have that many people following it, but this the book that we did in Pressbook is basically a copy of that course that was integrated into Pressbook. So we, instead of having quizzes, which was on our LMS, we integrated them with H5P, yeah.
Alexis, do you have a link, or could you tell us where anybody who's interested could find or see this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can actually share my screen. Which would be share screen here.
And that was a question from Emily in the chat as well.
Oh,
and
okay.
Adeola, if you have a link to any of the public resources for language, if you're willing to either share them or put them in the chat, I think people would like to see those as well.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so I don't have, my computer is saying that I don't have permission to share, which is great, because then it says I would have to exit Zooms, which I won't. But I will copy the link in the chat. So it's on the, oh, I sent it to Adeola, which is not what I wanted. 1 second.
And Alexis, once it's in the public chat, I'm happy to open it up and share my screen, and then you can...
please do so. So the book right now is on the Open Library at eCampus Ontario. And so basically anyone can view it from there. And this right now is, so as you can tell, it's in French. So what we're trying to do here with eCampus Ontario is develop more resources or books or whatever you want to call it. And so this is one of the books that we have put together. There's other institutions that have done some books in French, but it is very limited. We don't have that many. So it's something that we're working closely with them.
Awesome. So I did have a question.
Go ahead.
It's a certificate program and it's openly licensed. So is it possible to get a certificate through taking this course openly, or how does that work?
So basically what we decided to do is we offered the first course, which would be this one, OER research, free on Pressbook. And then if people want to follow the rest of the courses on their certificate, they can register at La Cité on our, I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you cut out a little bit there, but I'm assuming you said
Alexis, what we heard was people could
Yep.
take the course for free, and then if they liked it, they would be able to enroll and do the rest of the certificate program through La Cité. Is that, there may have been something else.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly it. Yep.
Great, and are there any projects you guys have coming up?
No, so that's the thing right now, because we've been so busy with the competency-based approach. We've been developing a lot of learning units, which are all based on 14 hours. And so we haven't done any others with eCampus Ontario, but it is something that we would like to do eventually. And I know there's talks about another book that we will develop on Pressbook, but I just haven't heard of it yet. So.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and segue into the next part of this, where we're talking about some of the tools that are that exist in Pressbooks for people to create resources in different languages. So basically, I'm going to jump into screen share here. All right. So basically, there are 3 different levels, and the 3 things that you have to think about when you're creating books on a web-based platform are 1, the interface that you're using, as an author, as a designer, when you're in Pressbooks, what language are you looking at as you're navigating through the screen? And then number 2 is the language that is being communicated to your distribution services. So in the language that is that the metadata is rooted in. And then the third one is not the language itself, but the scripts that are being used to display those books. So we have different language settings for each of those 3 things. And I'll go ahead and start with the metadata and kind of walk you through how each of those can be customized in Pressbooks for those who haven't done it before, and just share how Alexis and Adeola and their programs have been using these tools. So with the metadata, Pressbooks, to get to the metadata language and set that, you would go to your book, and then from the left sidebar menu, you would go to book information. So this is where you set all of the metadata for your book, the publisher, the copyright, ISBNs, and everything. And so if you scroll down the first main section, the last part of the first general information in your metadata section is language. So here there's a list of over 100 different languages that you can set your book to. Everything from Arabic in different regions to Chinese in different regions. There's different dialects of English, Finnish, French. So it's not every language in the world, but it's a little bit over 100 of them. And so this, if you'll see the text that's right under this, it says the metadata for your digital books, for your ebook, and communicates that to distribution services. So if you set this language, like I have it set to Spanish, then the like Lulu and Amazon and and Barnes and Noble, when you upload that book onto those services, then that's how they know that this book is a Spanish book, and so that they can sort it in their catalogs, and it can be distributed efficiently. And it also affects some of the generated content in Pressbooks that's part of the design. So you know that in some themes, that chapter and part, or in the table of contents, the word contents, some of the terminology that the automatically generated parts of the book is affected by this metadata. And so if we go to a book, and this book is set to Spanish, you'll see that a lot of the administrative buttons at the top, and to read the book, the contents, the metadata, part of the words that are being used throughout the interface of the web book have been changed to Spanish. And you'll see that that's not always true. For instance, for the publication date, it's fecha de publicación, but for additional subjects, that hasn't been translated yet. So how that works in Pressbooks is something that Steele will get into a little bit later as we talk about transifex. But what you want to keep in mind is that the translation of the Pressbooks interface and the webbook interface as well is dependent on a community translation project. And so we've set a standard at 25%. We don't pull in any languages until 25% of that language has been translated. So because more than 25% of Spanish is available, you'll see that the webbook interface has been translated. So if I change this to Arabic, because Arabic hasn't been translated over 25%, that Arabic language in the metadata will still be communicated to the ebook distributor, but it won't affect the interfaces of the webbook, because those we don't have enough of the translated language in to pull it and display. So, but after that gets above 25%, the language gets pulled in from Transifex, from this collective translation project every time we deploy. So it's pretty up to date. And so you'll see here throughout the navigation, a lot of parts of this are going to appear translated once you change the metadata setting. And it's the same with the exports as well. So I've got this set to the Andreessen theme, and you'll notice that in the snap for the Andreessen theme that it does include the word chapter in those in the exports in the displays in Spanish in the language that I've chosen for the metadata, in all the places where those that automatically generated content appears in the export formats as well. So contenido, capítulo. And so if you see, if you speak a language and you're trying to provide a resource in that language and you realize that something is spelled wrong, that the wrong translation has been uploaded, it is possible for you to contribute to that project, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But it's a community project, so that would be why, and that's how that all comes together. So the next thing I would like to talk about is the interface language. So every user that's in Pressbooks, as they're using, they have their own profile settings. This is for subscribers, for administrators. Every single person can choose what some of the settings that control their experience in Pressbooks. So for instance, we have...
Taylor, real fast, could you show someone how they could get to that profile page?
Yeah, of course. So there are a couple of ways. The primary way is to go to the top navigation bar and hover over your name here and click Edit My Profile. You can also, from any of the tabs up here, you're most likely to have access to the My Catalog tab. From your book dashboard, you can go to Users in Your Profile. So this is where you can access all the settings that control how you interact with Pressbooks, including like the accessibility interface, changing your own contact information, as well as the language. So this language setting is a little bit more limited than the metadata one. You'll notice that on this network, there's only 4 options. Pressbooks is available 100% in English and French, so a lot of networks have both of those, but it is something that you have to request for us to put on a network. They're not available by default, but it is possible to do so, and it is possible on open source networks as well. That behavior comes in by default through WordPress. So this is all based on the underlying WordPress software, and but it's also coming in from Transfix. So the ability for open source networks to be able to add this would be whatever they wanted. For hosted networks, we do, again, cap that at 25% so that a language can't be listed and available on a different, the interface can't be translated and available to hosted networks until the language has been translated at 25%, so that it's at least usable. So here I have it set to English. This is not actually the default. The default is the site language, or the site default. So what that means is that if I click site default and I save my settings, and I go to the book that I've been on, you'll notice that everything was translated into Spanish. So because that book's language metadata was set to Spanish, and I'm accessing that book, everything will translate into the book that you're accessing. So if you want to be able to navigate as an administrator, especially in a specific language, then you'll have to set that language in the settings of your profile. And then that'll override the default language for any book. Otherwise, if you have people working on projects in German and Spanish and whatever language, and you're navigating through those books, it's going to automatically translate into those languages for your interface. And again, I mean, if you're working on books that are in English, but you feel more comfortable in French, it is possible to set your admin navigation interface to that. Let me see if I'm skipping anything here.
So Taylor, let's walk through that situation. Suppose I'm like Alexis, I'm a Francophone, and I would prefer to use the Pressbooks interface in French on an English language network, those chauvinists, right? Those English language speakers. So you're saying, if I set this locally from me to French here, and save it, everywhere I go on this network, it will try to display all of my settings for me in my chosen language.
Yes. So now everything is, I'm still accessing my Spanish book, but since my language is set to French, all of my admin is in French. And if you have other network administrative user capabilities, the other menus will change as well. Yeah, and I think that is all that I had to say on that, unless there's anything else that you can think to mention, Steele.
I would just pause and wonder if there's any questions. I know we covered a lot pretty quickly there. Does anyone have questions either that they've thought of since then for Adeola or Alexis, or questions for Taylor about the different ways to configure your administrative language settings as a Pressbooks user?
I have a quick question. So from what Taylor showed just now, it seems like we only have like 4 languages, right? Interface.
Yeah, so it really depends. So there are a number of languages and transifex that are over 25% translated, and they can be added to your network. But they aren't included by default. So it would be a request that you made to us. This is a little different if it's not a Pressbooks hosted network. It's a little bit more up to them to control those, control how WordPress is working with the accounts that are on their open source network. But for us, we say with Alexis on the eCampus Ontario network, eCampus Ontario requested French. And so they have French and English, and I believe a couple other languages that have been loaded onto their network. That's not true for every network, but if you have a specific request for a language that has already been translated up to 25% on transifex, then it is possible for us to add that language as an interface language option for your network.
And Adeola, was that your question, or was there something else that you wanted to?
I think she answered my question. I was just curious about the number of languages that one will be able to access on that interface. But since she explained that it has to be upon request, and as long as we have up to 25% translation, then I'll be able to do that in Pressbooks.
Yeah, so
that answers it.
And I would say, again, like Taylor did a really nice job of breaking this down, but it's a little bit complicated in that there is the administrative language for the whole admin interface, and then there's the administrative language that a user can see. Those are the two things that have to be loaded onto a network and then chosen there. There's also the book language, which Taylor was showing you, which is a whole bunch of choices. Those will be available for every network, whether or not the languages have been loaded. And the next thing that I'm going to show is you can also declare support for different kinds of alphabets or scripts. And this is something that I know, Adeola, you and many other language teachers use quite often. So for example, if I'm teaching or using or writing in a language that isn't written in the traditional Latin script or the Western script, what we would do is we would come in and we would say, I'm going to go into a sample book. And I'm going to say, let's say I have Arabic, and let's say I have Chinese, and let's say I have ancient Greek in that book. I want to make sure that those characters will display well in the web book. And if I were to make a PDF export or an ebook export, I want to make sure those characters display properly instead of turning into those character not found annoying blocks, right? So the way that we would do that is in an individual book, I would come to the Appearance Theme Options menu. And I would say, which are the scripts or the languages that I need to have supported in this book? So for example, I'm going to say Ancient Greek is one of them. And I'll say I also would like Traditional Chinese and let's say Arabic. You can see there's a whole bunch of different language families or scripts that can be chosen from here. And if you notice that there is another alphabet or language script that isn't listed here and would like it to be supported, you can let us know, and we'll try to make sure that that's included in the overall Pressbooks experience for everyone. So that would be what I would do there. Once I've saved this, I've saved those changes. Now in this book, I can be sure that if I use those characters, right, if I type them with my keyboard, that they will be included and they'll render properly in the web and in all of my exports. So that's another language setting option that's a little bit different, but still something you can do. And it's declaring support for different alphabets or different scripts. I'll pause there and say if there's any questions about that or about anything else that came earlier. Does anyone have questions? If not, I can show the translation interface. Okay, so the last thing that I want to suggest is that Pressbooks is an open source software project. And that means, in theory, that anybody can contribute to it. And anyone can make it better, and when they make it better, it gets better for everyone. And it's a really beautiful thing, right? We're doing this together, we're sharing, we're improving things for each other. One of the best ways that anybody, even without development or coding skills, can contribute to projects like this is through internationalization or through localization. I am a limited person. I mean, I speak English and I speak French, and that's it. There's thousands of languages across the world that I can't access and that I'm unable to help with or to understand because of my linguistic capacities. But there are many people in this call who speak many more languages and who may want to help contribute and make sure that this tool that lets people publish things openly is more available to more users. So, for example, the tool that we use is called Transifex. And the URL that I'll share here in the chat is anybody who wants to can come to Transifex, this site here, and see the various projects that we have for Pressbooks. I'm going to go ahead and log out. And I'll go back to this URL and say, this is what you would see if you'd never been to Transifex before. And you can say, Pressbooks has these 7 different projects. The main one that we have is Pressbooks, and these other ones are the different themes that we use. So you would start with Pressbooks. You'd say, Pressbooks has already been translated from English to 49 different languages. It's not fully translated in those languages, but at least somebody has contributed in 49 different languages. If I wanted to contribute, and let's say you want to contribute, we'd love you to contribute in a language that you know that we don't. So you would say, help Pressbooks translate content. And then you'd have to create a Transifex account or log in with the Transifex account. So I'm just going to use an existing Google account here. Unfortunately, Transifex doesn't always redirect you the way that you'd want after you're done, but in this case it did. Cool. And it says I'm in this project, and then I could select the project I want to contribute to. Here I'm going to say I want to contribute to the Pressbooks project. And it says, okay, there's a translate button. So I'll click translate, and then it'll ask me what language do you want to translate to? And I've only joined the French language because that's the only language that I can actually help with. But let's say I want to translate to French, and it will say, okay, there are 1,024 strings, about 6,000 unique words that Pressbooks needs a translation for to be fully available in French. Only 44 of them have been untranslated. So let's just view the ones that haven't been translated yet. And I'll say, okay, so on the left here it says bulk add. Well, what's the French for bulk add? I could type, Alexis, you want to help me? What would you use for bulk add, to add something in bulk? If I'm not really sure, then I might go, let's go to Google Translate and let Google Translate help me. So I'd say bulk add. And we'll say, let's try French here. This is my cheat tool. Ajout en vrac, is that? Okay, yeah, let's try that. I think that works. So what I would do is I would say, okay, ajout en vrac. And I'm going to say, this was capitalized initially, so I'd say, let's make it capitalized, ajout en vrac. And I'm going to save this as the translation. So you can see now, here's the English, here's the French. I've just contributed a French translation. So the next time we release Pressbooks, instead of seeing the word bulk add in English, wherever that appears in the interface, Alexis and other French speakers will now see ajout en vrac. And then I could go back and find another one that's pretty, these are just font names, so I don't need to translate those. But I'd come down and I'd say, right to left. So I might say, écrit, I'm not going to fill it out right here, but I would provide the translation and I would just click Save Translation. And that's a way that anybody in the world who has an interest in making Pressbooks available in a different language or their target language can participate and help us make this project better for everyone. You don't need a lot of coding skills. You do have to have patience to use the Transifex software, which is not always the easiest software to use, but it's free to make an account and to contribute. And we love and appreciate when people help us improve the language of our tool and make it available to more people around the world. That's what, go ahead, Taylor.
Fun fact, Pressbooks is available in almost 100% Croatian.
Yeah, there was an open source user that wanted to use Pressbooks. He lives in Croatia, and so he took it upon himself, and I think he did this almost single-handedly, translated the whole interface into Croatian. And that's, like, I love those kinds of stories. And this is the beauty of an international community working together to build and support tools that work for them. And we'd love you to be part of that community, or to contribute, or to find people with language skills that would help make this software usable to everyone that wants to use it. That's what I wanted to share there. I'll pause there. I know that was kind of a quick dive into a complicated translation tool. Does anyone have questions for me or things that they want to ask about contributing to translations?
So I am just wondering about, so for example, if I take it upon myself to maybe add some translations in maybe Arabic or Swahili.
Yeah, great.
How much of that will I do for me to be sure I have added up to 25%?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me show you. So for example, let's come back to the Pressbooks root project. And I'm going to say, I can show you that part too. I'm going to say, let's pick a language maybe. And I can look and show all the languages here. And I can say, all right, I'm going to search for Arabic. Okay, right now Arabic, if I look at this, I'm going to click Arabic and I'm going to click View Resources. And this will tell me right now, it's only 1.27% translated. So this one really needs help. So I could click on this file and then it would say, well, when Transifex decides to load, I could say, oh, I need to be logged in and join that team. So I can't remember how to, okay, there we go. Join team. I'm going to join the Arabic team. Now I'm able to translate Arabic. So now you'll see this translate button. So Adeola, you or someone else could come in and you would see, okay, here are all these strings. And if I knew how to type in Arabic, I would type my translation. You know, I don't, but it's a right to left switch and you can add characters. And so you could contribute just by doing that. So you find the language you want to, and then you would also be able to see up here by percentage, you can kind of see how many words are left, how many haven't been reviewed. And you could say, I only want to see those that have been translated already. So you can see here are the existing Arabic translations. Yeah. Not many, but there's some, right? And that's kind of how I would start. Okay. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, it does.
Are you thinking about helping us with Yoruba?
Well, it's a possible thing that we could do, but we'll think about that. How to go about it is what I am not sure right now in terms of who and how much of time we are willing to commit to doing.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and what I think I probably want to do next is maybe make a little volunteer training guide, or just make it easier for people to find and understand how to do this. So that's a goal of ours to do in the next month or two, to encourage people to contribute language translations.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Taylor, who's going to show us a number of other exciting examples of people who are doing innovative or exciting things internationally or multilingually with Pressbooks.
Great. So I just kind of wanted to introduce you to a couple of projects that that are using Pressbooks right now and are doing some cool stuff. Not all of them are actually hosted with us. There's a few of them that are self-hosting, and they're also doing really cool things with, say, scientific journals. So the first one I wanted to show you was the one that Alexis school is using, which is eCampus Ontario. eCampus Ontario actually funded Pressbooks translation completely into French last year. And so that's why a lot of those features are available for the French language. Their organization provides access to Pressbooks for schools that are in all across Ontario. Another one I'd like to show you is Addition Science et Bien Commun, which is Science for the Common Good. They're an organization that is based in Quebec, and they create French language scientific journals available for free. They also have a sister organization called Science Afrique. This is an open source network that publishes scientific journals for African cultures and Haiti in the French language. And you'll see that I can drop their URL if you'd like to visit it, but they've got a really cool thing going here where they've collaborated with multiple organizations to offer this scientific research. There's also the Acatra Foundation, who has actually been a supporter of Pressbooks for a really long time, for several years. And this project is part of the reason why we have a lot of Indian scripts available in Pressbooks, but they provide free Gujarati literature and digitize it and make it available in a webbook format. So those were just a few of the projects that I wanted to talk about. We don't really have, I think we've gone through our whole agenda, and we would love to open up to any questions for anyone who would like to speak.
Well, mine is not a question. I was trying to share the link to our Pressbook, but I couldn't do that from my end. I don't know why.
Adeola, I think I may have shared it in the chat. I just want to make sure it's the one that you're thinking about. Is it the Lictal? Is it the Lictal Resources book?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I put a link in there. So this is, if anyone missed it, it's wisc.unison.org/LCTL resources, which stands for Less Commonly Taught Languages.
Yeah.
And it's a big collaboratively edited book, or a collaboratively built book. So, and I put a couple other links. I put the link to Rosa Mystica, the very cool Swahili text, and then Bindamu, the one that, I can't remember her name. Who was it that worked on the Bindamu one? Was that Rebecca? No. Yeah, Rebecca Mandich.
Rebecca Mandich, yeah.
Yeah. And then a few other language ones that are kind of in development that haven't been finished.
Okay.
And then there's the Portuguese language textbook that I linked as well.
All right.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. I think we're wrapping up here. It was great to have Alexis and Adeola speak. And if any of you have any questions about language tools in Pressbooks, please feel free to email us.
Thank you.
All right. Good day, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Thanks, Alexis.
Yeah.
Bye.
A bientôt.
Bye, Taylor.
Bye.